My name is Dinesh Boaz. I'm a creative director and co-founder at Direct Agents. I'm also very excited today to be joined by Kristin Fallon. Kristin is the head of storytelling and content at GE Healthcare. And we're going to be talking about the future of storytelling. So I want to welcome Kristin to the stage.
Hey, Dinesh. Thank you.
Thank you. How's it going today, Kristin?
Good. I've been following along, and it's been actually really interesting for me. I didn't realize the healthcare industry would have so much in common with the fashion industry. I really, all of the sessions just resonated. So, yeah.
That's really great. That's really great to hear. Yeah, and I think there's been a good sort of theme in terms of how everyone in today's summit has been kind of thinking about the world. And from the summit we did 3 months ago, where it was so much uncertainty, to now where there is uncertainty, but there's hope. And so I think we're all kind of thinking in a different direction now. So I guess kind of to get right into it, talking about your role more at GE Healthcare, what are some ways that you've been navigating the changes that have been happening, specifically starting, I guess, the months of the pandemic? What has GE Healthcare done? What have you done to kind of dictate that narrative?
Yeah, I think that, and somebody said this earlier, so I'll agree, the pandemic in many ways accelerated things we were already doing. And then in other ways, it kind of gave us a hard shake and made us think a little bit differently for good. I think one thing we've been seeing for a long time is just this desire for people to feel a real connection. And, we see this, right? There's so much data out there around this paradox of we're all more connected with digital devices and information, and yet somehow people are feeling more isolated. And I think that's what's kind of given rise to more purpose-driven brands. I think it's why, if you watch or hear Brené Brown, her messages really resonate because it's about this desire for human connection. And so here we've got a pandemic, and now we're like literally physically isolated from each other. So we saw that there was just a real need for a true heart-to-heart connection,
right?
More than ever. And I think for us, from a storytelling perspective, we looked for ways to really authentically connect with our audience.
Right.
And we had to do it quickly, and we had to provide a lot of transparency. And to do that, we actually had to become a lot less precious about what we put out, right? Get really comfortable kind of putting out, I think, much more raw or, fast turnaround content.
Right.
And, for us, we like to say we applied handbrakes to a freight train. We're a really large marketing organization. There's 1,500 of us. And the first thing we did when we saw that, the pandemic was really, I'd say, rising US, Europe, and elsewhere, was to just stop all of our paid advertising.
Wow.
And, 1,500 people all around the world telling a lot of different stories for a lot of different product lines. That was a big moment for us as a brand to do that. And then at the same time, start to take a much more coordinated, organic approach to the content that we put out. So prioritizing news, because that was informative and what people were looking for. Helpful content. So, in our case, it was things, so we're a med tech provider. We sell very medical devices that are being used often on the front lines. So how do you clean them and disinfect them during a pandemic? And then also, kind of moving over into the emotional side. So less rational content, but more just stories. And in that sense, we did something, I think, a little out of the ordinary for us. We'd done it before, but leaned a little bit more heavily on user-generated content.
Sure.
So our audience, our employees are on the front lines with healthcare workers. And so we had them submit photos of the work that they were doing on the front lines. And then we were posting those. So I'd say in that sense, just some new ways that we were looking at sources of content.
So you would say, as all the marketers have been saying today, keep the marketing on, but think about it in a very different way and really focusing on your messaging with things like transparency, assurance, trust, kind of all of the above, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so you mentioned UGC. I mean, how do you, and a lot of brands are talking about, the new normal of photo shoots and returning to studios. How do you see that moving forward in terms of handling content and production?
Yeah, yeah. And actually it's been interesting hearing some of the other sessions because we're a B2B in the healthcare industry. So in many ways it's been, I think, an easier shift for us right now because COVID is the story for us. And so, we've been relying on our employees to submit content, our customers to submit content, we did hire a filmmaker and send him out to cover the pandemic from a news perspective. And, in that sense, I think we've just sort of embraced the change and maybe not felt it as dramatically as some others have.
Right. So tell us more about that. And obviously, that's an exciting story in terms of the kind of creative risk that you took during COVID and sent a filmmaker out on the road. And we've been following that. Tell us more about kind of how that came to light.
Yeah. So it's I think that this pandemic sort of created a moment for storytellers, and it's you could do nothing or you could take some risks, right? And so for us, we faced into, I'd say, a high risk but high reward situation where we, just as the pandemic was really taking shape, none of us will forget this. It was a very dark news cycle, right? And very uncertain times. And here we are in the healthcare industry, and we knew that there was another side to the story, that there were incredibly powerful stories of human resilience and courage happening in the healthcare industry. And when suddenly your industry becomes the news, it was our feeling that we could become a news outlet.
Sure.
And why not turn our brand channels into, full-time news storytelling? So we hired a filmmaker and correspondent. He's a one-man crew.
Right.
He's a former military pilot, really experienced in crisis. And we put him in an RV and we drove him into the eye of the pandemic.
Wow.
Yeah. So he spent about 6 weeks. So 42 videos produced in 42 days.
Wow.
And told stories, from the front lines. And it was terrifying when we were deciding whether or not to do this, because you can imagine all of the risk, not only to, his health or someone else's well-being, but just, we weren't sure how it would resonate with our audiences.
Right.
But we felt so strongly that this was an important story to tell and that our audience did want to hear it, that was why we were willing to take the risk. And it's actually ended up being our most successful campaign ever.
Amazing. Wow.
Which is incredible. So we ended up, beating out our competitors in share of voice by multiple X. We saw levels of engagement like we've never seen before on this content. And I'd say we even sort of transcended into like the realm that I attributed only to Beyonce, which is, we got like 98% positive sentiment on this. And that's compared to maybe like the mid 50s for most COVID campaigns. And the few negative comments that we got, we saw that our own audience came to our defense. Right. And as a B2B, you just don't see that sort of engagement in social media.
So you saw people speaking up for the brand. So do you feel that was from Mikey K, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
You feel that was from him being authentic, creating that raw experience of, from the videos that I've seen, he's telling the story from his RV, late at night while he's done like a whole day of shooting and he's kind of recapping the day. Was that kind of like you're there real time feel that you felt that was engaging?
It was. And people really connected to him. So I think we got very lucky in that he was it's interesting. Our contract with him was that he was an influencer. Right. And I'm thinking I've hired a filmmaker, but he ended up being like an influencer for us. And I think people did resonate with his personality. It matched our brand, so that helped. And you could, like you're saying, we all could watch. He didn't get a haircut pet for 6 weeks. He didn't.
Right.
He started losing sleep.
Right.
He's living in an RV. Like, we all got to watch this happen in real time.
And do you feel, I mean, as a marketer, talking for other e-commerce marketers that are probably listening in, do you feel that, you know, an experience like this is transformative for the way stories can be told, where the traditional influencer is someone that that one would aspire to be? You know, you're on a beach somewhere, you're escaping reality, you're obviously perfect in every way. Do you feel that now there can be a story that's more real, and that, you know, can be kind of rough around the edges, but yet what that consumer is seeing is something they can actually connect with? I mean, do you think that's the future, as opposed to aspirational marketing that we've been fed for the past 100 years? I mean,
100%. I truly believe that. And I think that it comes back to this notion of connection, right? You know, people connected to Mikey. He resonated for them. And, you know, the two characters that were our inspiration behind hiring him, we always said he needs to be a combination of Anderson Cooper and Anthony Bourdain.
right.
And these are two beloved, you know, personalities. And I think that, yeah, we can story tell through these types of characters. And if they reflect our brand, then that's a win for all of us.
That's great. That's great to hear. And then I guess thinking about, you know, the world we're in now. So things are opening up, but, you know, things are obviously still safeguarded, and we're all kind of concerned about what's next. And then obviously there's a huge social movement for change, and hopefully, you know, that we're going to see more impact from that. But it's obviously still a movement that's continuing, you know, and there's so many studies now that are saying, you know, how do we message authentically in this environment for brands? And some brands are obviously stepping into the forefront, some brands are staying quiet, some brands are jumping on the bandwagon, you know. So what is your advice in terms of like what you think about this, and how people are approaching this new space where it's, you know, there's a tension from the pandemic going away to now a whole changing place where, you know, young people want change?
I think that what's true today was true before. It's just more true now. And I think there's, in my mind, sort of three things we all have to think about. And they're almost back to basics, right? The first one is, you know, does your brand and your company have a really strong purpose and vision? And it's such a simple concept, but it's actually hard to do. And I'm not sure everybody gets it right. But you have to have that, because that's what you're going to start messaging against. And, you know, this pandemic, it changed fast. It's still changing fast on us. And I think we are all starting to get used to this new normal, but it's not done.
Right.
And so to be able to move quickly, you have to understand your identity, because that's how you're going to authentically connect with your audience. Right. And if I use us as an example, you know, our purpose is to improve lives in moments that matter. When the pandemic hit, it became, if ever there was a moment that mattered, this is it, right? You can make that shift really fast. So that would be one thing. I think, you know, it's another kind of cliche term, but it's cliche for a reason, is relevance. You know, relevance is about meeting people where they are. And I think that, you know, we all have to ask ourselves as we're creating content, why are we doing it? Is it because I have this product to sell and I'm just, you know, a hammer with a nail and I've got to do it? Or am I actually bringing value to my audience and truly able to answer that, you know, what's in it for me question for the customer, and do something different? And I think the third thing is kind of having the humility and the self-awareness to know when to dial it back or when to dial it up. Right. And so, you know, when the pandemic hit, it, you know, in some cases it was a good thing that to go quiet, right? It was inappropriate to really aggressively sell your products, especially for us in the healthcare industry. But there's other moments, I think, where we need to also be thinking about where we need to, you know, become more vocal. And I think Black Lives Matter actually is a great example. Sure. And we're seeing that desire from audiences to hear from their brands. So it's not just what you create, but it's the volume and the quantity as well.
Sure. Are there any examples or things that you guys are working on in terms of like how GE Healthcare is approaching this?
You mean,
Just Black Lives Matter or any messaging or kind of
yeah.
thinking about, even if it's not current right now, like what your plans are?
Yeah, so the success of the Mikey K filmmaker series was just so big, and I think we now see that this is a sweet spot for us. So we're going to continue this. We're actually working on a season 2.
Wow.
And we're going to send him somewhere else in the world. And we had been starting down this path to build that out when, the Black Lives Matter movement really took shape. And so now we are looking at how to use Mikey as a platform, because we have enough of an audience base here that we think there's an opportunity to help drive discourse here. So we are planning to get him to meet with senior African-American members of the healthcare community and industry, and kind of hear what this movement means for our industry and create that discourse.
Right. And I love what you said about just how, brands need to start thinking about what's not just what everyone else is saying, but thinking about the unique voice in all this, and also being authentic to what you really mean and not just saying something for the sake of saying. So I think that's awesome that you guys are taking your own take on it. What are some advice you have, as a leader, with all the creatives that you work with, all the marketers that you work with in this world of Zoom and, working remote as a creative? How do you inspire creativity? I mean, it's a challenge. I mean, for us as an agency too, it's, we're all over the place today, and we're, trying to lead our teams, we're trying to work with our clients, and the same way with our brands and partners, they're trying to lead their teams and kind of stay ahead of the anxiousness and, what's to come, what's going to happen in the world. The world is changing so fast. So what's your advice in terms of how you navigate this?
I think in moments like this, it is important to zoom out and sort of take that historical perspective. We know that this is going to pass. We know that we'll all change as a result of it. We already are changed. And so, kind of detaching ourselves from the immediate pressure that we're all feeling from, I had to kick my husband out of the house today with my daughter so they wouldn't interrupt me. There's the realities that we all live. Detaching ourselves from that and just putting this in context, and then looking for the inspiration inside of that, like it's moments like this that can make or break your career. I think it's this risk reward, it's this opportunity to do something meaningful, and we are in this space because we love to create. And I think channeling this as an opportunity and using this as that moment to explore what can we create that's meaningful, staying plugged into our customers, our audience, the trends, and then finding that little niche where we can do something different. That's, to me, it's an incredibly exciting time. It is.
That's great. And I guess our last question is just in terms of, you mentioned using Mikey K on the road in terms of that kind of raw feel. Are there any other things that you're doing in terms of video? I know some of our partners that were speaking today are doing things where they're shooting in home, or they're having their customers shoot things, and then they're kind of editing and putting those things together. Are any other examples you can share that you guys are thinking about till we can actually go back in the world of like real production and real shoots?
Yeah, we've used this as an opportunity to sort of clean up and just really focus and simplify. So I think for now, we are going to stick with this Mikey K formula. How we use it, we're gonna push the boundaries on it a little bit. One thing that we found so fascinating with him was when he was in the RV in the US, he was physically, on our manufacturing floors talking to desk workers who were now working the line to deliver ventilators, right? That's exciting because it's physical. He was also virtually interviewing people who were in hospitals in Europe. But it was still really two-dimensional, much in the same way that you and I are two-dimensional right here. Sure. I think we're going to look for ways to kind of push the boundary in virtual filming, and just create more dimension with that. So maybe that's getting a doctor to handhold his iPhone and walk around and mic. So I think we're going to push the boundaries with this, but really stay focused in this. I think COVID has been a great equalizer for us. It's made us realize that an experience of a doctor in Europe actually resonates for, a doctor in Indonesia and vice versa. And so how do we kind of create that international exchange of information and community is where I want to take this.
Right. So you feel that you can build that sense of community with this new world of creative in a much faster way, would you say?
Totally. Yeah.
Okay, great. And I just wanted to open up to any other questions that anyone may have out there in terms of, any creative questions that are out there. I guess one question that came in terms of just how can brands find their unique voice? I know you touched on this. Is there anything else that you can touch on that in terms of like during this time of like global unrest and struggle, like are there any other things that brands can do to find their unique voice?
I do believe it comes back to your identity and who you are. So let's, start there. And then, I think just, go in all directions. I mean, I'd say, kind of do this, no idea is a bad idea. Actually, I heard recently Aerosmith used to do this. They used to have Terrible Idea Thursday. And every Thursday they'd get together and you had to bring your bad ideas. And that's what led to like some of their most famous songs.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's great.
So, maybe, bring your bad ideas forward, bring your good ideas forward. I think you just have to put it all out on the table. And, it comes back to risk as well. Like, I think an interesting example of like a brand that totally did something odd, but it worked for them. Are you familiar with the National Cowboy Museum and what they did?
No.
So this museum was obviously not on my radar until recently. I think they're based in Wyoming, but when the pandemic shut everything down, they had to close their doors. And so their marketing department asked their security guard if he would take over their Twitter handle.
Wow.
And the tweets are hilarious.
Right.
And it's just totally not, is it adding any, concrete value to their business? No, but it's great. And it got a lot of attention. And so I think, you can do risk taking like we did, which is very specific to our brand, but you can also have a little fun.
Right. So the advice is kind of keep disrupting, would you say? I mean, there's ways to kind of test and move much faster than we've ever done before. And the sort of cycle of that is, as everyone has said today, has been accelerated where, what we were going to sort of disrupt 6 months from now can happen, I don't know, a month from now, and we can change that again. So it's kind of how you're thinking about the world.
It is. And I think that also translates actually to the structure of our teams. We're thinking a lot more about how we structure to be more agile so that we can kind of pounce on these opportunities.
Exactly. I mean, as an agency ourselves, we're thinking a lot along those lines as well. It's like even our creative team is thinking, okay, how do we make more things that are different or that we've never done before or that we can put in front of our clients to just, maybe it's a bad idea, but we're going to try it. We're going to connect it with a media idea that we have. So we're thinking along in the same way, which is interesting to hear.
Yeah.
What about just in terms of, another question just came in terms of like process of acquiring content? You mentioned a lot of UGC. Are you working with any stock footage, or is everything that you guys do more original content in terms of like what you're pulling in today?
Yeah, I'd say we use stock for things like web, right? Or brochures.
Right.
But I think from a storytelling perspective and in any situation where we're going to try to engage more with our audience, it's going to be very raw. So it could be coming in more from our field for sure. Right. It could be more of the kind of sending out a Mikey or, we're even talking about how do we equip more of our teams in our regions with a handheld and get them out.
Right.
So yeah, it's going to be a lot more raw.
Yeah, I feel like just when you say, giving more people the handhelds, I feel like that's definitely the next step, because I think there's going to be a fatigue point when we're watching each other on Zoom and then we turn on the TV and that's another Zoom call, and so on and so on. So I think there's got to be some disruption in that if we're going to continue in this sort of realm where there's got to be more raw footage that people can shoot on the ground on their own. right? I mean,
Yeah,
hopefully that's the next step from all this.
I totally agree. I do.
Well, I think that's all the time we have in terms of questions. I wanted to play a quick video to kind of end the summit today. Anything else you want to share, Kristin?
No, this has been awesome. Thanks, Dinesh.
No, thanks again for joining us. And I think, you know, it's amazing to hear kind of what you've been doing, what you have planned, and really like really insightful ways of like looking at the world, which hopefully everyone can take away from. So I'm going to play a quick video of what our team has created, just kind of during this time, being a New York-based agency, and thinking about, you know, all the different things that have been sort of happening over the past 4 weeks from the pandemic on. We just wanted to make a piece that just wanted to reflect, you know, the times and how we're experiencing it.
New York. We've been trapped in our homes, sitting in front of our color boxes, waiting for the day we could reclaim your streets once again. But what we saw turned our cloudy skies even more gray, and turned the stillness into chants. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Your sisters joined as the cry grew louder around the world, and our voices were finally heard. And this is just the start. But the sky turned to blue, rewarding our efforts, reminding us of your unique charm and our unmatched strength. We've been transformed into a new era of action. Our rose-colored glasses shattered, allowing us to see what's always been there, and the work that must be done. We will fight for you, we will fight with you, because we know equality is for all.
All right, thanks everyone for tuning into our Shapers of Change Summit, and thank you again, Kristin, for joining us, and all the speakers and presenters today. We'll be sharing all this content with you as a follow-up, and thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you soon.